Good afternoon. Today is Monday, September 1st, 2025. Today is Labor Day. Hope everybody is having a good day so far. This is an important day in which we celebrate the contributions of working people. And we should never, ever forget working people. That's something very important. I preached a sermon yesterday at a nursing home, talked about the fruits of our labor. Of course, there were a lot of people present who were retired, and a person who has worked all their lives and worked hard and done a good job, and then finally they earn that well deserved retirement. And they should, at that point, be able to enjoy the fruits of their labor. And we should be able to enjoy some of the fruits throughout our lives. Labor history is a major interest of mine, as is Freemasonry and other fraternal orders. I've been a Mason for over 50 years, and I've off and on been a member of unions. I was at one time a member of the Texas State Employees Union. To be honest, later I was a member for 1 year of the American Federation of Teachers. And to be honest, I was not impressed by them at all because they claimed that uh, if a teacher was still on probation, there was nothing they could do to save their jobs, and that you had to complete 3 years probation before they could do anything for you, in spite of the fact that you paid them dues. That didn't make a bit of sense. I'm currently a member of the Texas Correctional Employees Union. All these groups are part of the American Federation of Labor slash and uh, Congress of Industrial Organizations. But I want to talk to you today about one of the early unions that doesn't exist anymore, and it paved the way for later unions. It was a very important institution, the Knights of Labor, and there was a strong Masonic connection. And on April 18th of 1985, I was working at Terrell State Hospital, and I rode a bus to Austin with the uh, Texas State Employees Union for Lobby Day, and what we did, we visited the AFL-CIO headquarters, and I saw on the wall pictures of the history of Texas labor, including or some pictures of the Knights of Labor, and I immediately had a strong sense that there was a Masonic connection, and research proved that I was right. By the way, that lobby day, which we were uh, lobbying for pay raises and other benefits, and while I was there, I gave letters to my state representative, state senator, and to Governor Mark White on issues unrelated to state employment. Uh, and they're not germane to this video, so I won't deal with them at this time. But let me tell you about the Knights of Labor. It was originally called the Noble and Holy Order of Knights of Labor. It's been well described as the most important and by far the largest secret society in the U.S., organized in the interests of industrial workers. When I had this article published in 1999 in the Scottish Rite Journal, I received a letter from Brother Leo Zanelli in England, who published a British Masonic publication called The Square, asking me for permission to use material from my article in the article he was writing on Freemasonry and the workers, which I gladly agreed to do so. In his article, he talked about both the Knights of Labor and also another union, which I don't think exists anymore. It's called the Boilermakers Union, and there was some. It appears to have been some um, connection with masonry there, but It was established, the Knights of Labor was 1869, with a ritual heavily borrowed from Masonry. They removed most of the secret elements in 1882, only to restore them in 1895. Membership reached an all-time high of 729,677 in July of 1886. This included 95,000 African Americans. By the 1897, however, the membership had dropped to 175,000. Never regaining their former strength, they continued to operate as a secret society until 1917, when they were officially dissolved. One historian of the order correctly observed the Knights were born noble and holy and died in the same state of grace. By the way, Brother Zanelli made the observations. He heard unions described by a lot of different names, but holy, that usually wasn't one of them. And by the way, regarding the boiler workers union, they didn't have a grand anything. Their head person was called the president. Throughout their 48-year history, the Knights of Labor consistently identified with the working class. The political platform called for improved safety regulations, mechanics liens, the 8-hour workday, public ownership of utilities, regulation of public transportation, regulation of child labor, an end to convict leasing, the establishment of bureaus of labor statistics and postal savings banks, equal rights for women. They also call for the establishment, when feasible, of cooperative institutions to supersede the wage system. In other words, instead of competition, let's have cooperation. And a particular economic development is called the co-op, and some business organizations are like that. I don't know how many there are, but I have done some study of co-ops, and we buy butter sometimes. It's produced from a co-op, and the purchases are used to support American farmers, a group that I strongly support. And the founder was Uriah Smith Stevens. He believed in an ideal society in which all individuals would be bound by brotherhood grounded in a production ethos, and a more perfect government in which an injury to one is a concern for all. In other words, we're all in it together. And this man was quite visionary during the late 19th century. But such a vision guided his life very much. He was born on August the 3rd of 1821 in Cape May County, New Jersey. He was deeply religious, studied at a Baptist seminary, but never entered the ministry. But he developed a practical theology which he employed in his mission to improve the quality of life of the working class. In 1846, he moved to Philadelphia, where he worked as a tailor and became active in politics. He was an abolitionist. He took the stump for John C. Fremont in 1856 and for Abraham Lincoln in 1860. He ran unsuccessfully for Congress in 1878 on the greenback labor ticket. In fact, he was responsible for incorporating the word labor in the party's name. Stevens was initiated and entered apprentice mason in Kinston Lodge number 211 in Philadelphia on December 9th, 1864, passed the degree of fellowcraft on February 25th, 1865, and raised to the sublime degree of Master Mason on March 24th, 1865. So you see, all three degrees were conferred toward the end of the Civil War. He was a member of Keystone Lodge number 2 of the Knights of Pythias and Fidelity Lodge number 138 of the Independent Order of Oddfellows. His involvement in Masonry began during the same period that he was involved with organized labor. In 1862, he helped to organize the Garment Cutters Union, which survived only 7 years. At his invitation, a few members of the recently demised union met at his home on Thanksgiving Day, November 25th, 1869. And at this meeting, he unfolded his plan for the noble and holy order of Knights of Labor, as a brotherhood of toil, open to every laborer, mechanic, and artisan who wanted to improve his mind and condition, regardless of country, creed, or color. At the new order's second meeting in December 28th of 1869, his ritual, known as Adelphos Kryptos, that is, secret brotherhood, was officially adopted. And in this opus, Stevens expressed his conviction that the everlasting truth revealed by the grand architect of the universe is that everything of value or merit is the result of creative industry. Ritualistic work included lectures on the nobility of labor, evils of the wage slavery, monopoly, and accumulation. Uh, Stevens selected an equilateral triangle with a circle as the new order's emblem, embellishing it with a symbolism from the various lodges to which he belonged. Knights of Labor elected him as their first master workman, first district master workman, and finally as first Grand Master workman. In 1879, there were 23 district assemblies and 1,300 local assemblies. At the time, Stevens resigned the highest order of office of the order. The decision resulted from a great blow he had experienced the previous year when the General Assembly, largely due to pressures exerted by Roman Catholic members, had voted to make public the name of the order, omit scriptural quotations, and modify the initiation ceremonies to make it less offensive to the Catholic Church. On January 1st, 1882, after 5 years of debate regarding the secrecy, the Knights of Labor became a public organization. And Stevens died on February the 13th of 1882. He was buried in Mount Peace Cemetery, which is owned by the Oddfellows in Philadelphia. At the time of his death, he was estranged from the order he had founded and guided for nearly a decade. Nevertheless, he was still revered by many knights. And as a result, when the General Assembly convened in Richmond, Virginia in 1886, they voted to appropriate $10,000 to erect a home for his family. And while Stevens did not live to see the organization at its peak of influence, he laid the foundation for much that followed. The work of the Knights of Labor and the accomplishments of labor unions were fulfillments of the vision of this great man, who embodied both the best of both Freemasonry and organized labor. Now, who was his successor? Another interesting man by Terence Vincent Powderly. He said, "I've tried so to lead my life as to injure no man in word or deed, to help others, and so doing recognize no creed, clime, condition, or color. I claim the right as an American, freeborn, under the tongue of good report, to serve God in dealing fairly and squarely by all his children with whom I have contact." These beautiful words express Terence Vincent Powderly's philosophy. He was a long-time Roman Catholic, but he did become a Mason at the age of 52. He never found a good reason for the church's opposition to Masonry. There was not a good reason then. There's not a good reason today for the Catholic Church or any other organization to oppose the Masonic order. And there have been numerous efforts on our part as Masons to bury the hatchet. And we'll just see what the next Pope does. Maybe we'll see some change. I hope so. He was born, Powderly was, January 22nd, 1849 in Carbondale, Pennsylvania. As a young man, he was terminated from employment as a machinist by an unjust foreman and blacklisted at the time of the Panic of 1873. Unfortunately, blacklisting still exists today. His experiences during the period contributed to the empathy which he always expressed toward the unemployed. Thus, he later recalled, "Only the man who stands utterly alone, friendless, moneyless, ill-clad, shirtless, and hungry, can know what it is to be a real tramp. The experience was mine through no fault of my own." Recognizing the need of working people to organize for protection of their rights. Powderly joined the Machinist and Blacksmiths Union, for which he served as an organizer in western Pennsylvania. He was initiated into the Knights of Labor in Philadelphia, September 6, 1876. Rising rapidly within the rank of the order, he was elected Grand Master Workman in 1879 and maintained this office until 1893. Now, the Knights experienced the greatest growth in membership and inclusiveness under Powderly's leadership. During the 1886 General Assembly in Richmond, the Grand Master Workman was introduced by Frank Farrell, a popular African American knight from Brooklyn, New York. I have made some efforts to find out more about Brother Farrell, but I've not been successful. I did find out he had a number of patents related to steam engines. I would like to know more about him. He was part of this assembly in Brooklyn. And of course, I would like to know if he was a Prince Hall Mason. But Powderly was instrumental in persuading the Knights to admit women, believing that skilled workers should assist in organizing the unskilled. He opposed the trade union form of organization. And what is meant by a trade union and a craft union are the same thing. They organize strictly skilled workers. An industrial union is a different type of organization in which they organize both skilled and unskilled. And Powderly insisted that wage slavery was no less evil than chattel slavery. He always took Catholic teachings very seriously. He declared that labor unions would not have been necessary if Christian leaders had followed Jesus Christ in word and deed. Powderly spoke of Christ as the world's greatest, most sublime agitator. He had a good relationship with a number of Catholic leaders, including Baltimore's James Cardinal Gibbons. However, he always made it clear that he did not take orders from Rome. Cardinal Gibbons was a very strongly pro-labor Catholic leader, and perhaps I'll do a video about him someday. And following his resignation as Grand Master Workman, Powderly served as the U.S. Commissioner General of Immigration, later held a number of positions with the U.S. Department of Labor. And keep in mind, up until this point in time, he was not a Mason. In 1900, he was visited in his office in Washington, D.C. by a committee of 3 members of the Knights of Columbus, a Catholic fraternal order, who invited him to join. He was appalled by the church's apparent double standard, allowing the Knights of Columbus to practice secret rites, but condemning the secret rites of the Knights of Labor. He never completed the application for Knights of Columbus membership. But fraternalism maintained its grip on him, recalling that during his tenure as Grand Master Workman, never once had he been misled or misinformed by a man who wore the Masonic emblem. He concluded that organization must be based on sound principles to attract such men to it. By the way, I recently listened to a video by a Masonic leader who gave a very interesting story. When he was 25, he had dinner at the home of his mother. And she made a suggestion to him: you ought to join the Masonic Lodge. He said, "What's that?" She said, "I don't know. But every really good man I've known has been a member of it." And now this man holds a major office in Masonry. That's a good story. And there's bad apples in every barrel. But any Mason who follows the teachings is going to do good to his fellow man. And people are going to have a positive view of the fraternity as a result. But Powderly decided to become a Mason. He petitioned Osiris Lodge number 26, which is now Osiris Pentalpha Lodge number 23 in Washington, D.C. He was initiated and entered apprentice October 2nd, 1901. He passed to the degree of Fellowcraft on November 20th, 1901, raised to the sublime degree of Master Mason December 18th, 1901. He continued his involvement in the Washington Scottish Rite bodies, where he became member of Mithras Lodge of Perfection, Evangelist Chapter of Rose Croix, Robert D. Bruce Council of Kadosh, and the Albert Pike Consistory. He received the 32nd degree on March 30th, 1907. He remained active in the lodge until his death in Washington, D.C. on the feast of St. John the Baptist, June the 24th, 1924. Throughout his career, Powderly was attacked from all sides, by trade unionists, by fellow knights, employers, reformers, politicians, and clergymen. He held his ground despite all these attacks and emerged as one of the most popular labor leaders of his day. There can be no doubt that the principles of Freemasonry, as he received them first in the Knights of Labor and later in the Masonic Lodge itself, help him to endure. His contributions to both Masonry and organized labor were great indeed. It was in 1917, John Hayes, the last master workman, Grand Master Workman of the Knights of Labor, put all the records into a leaky shed behind an insurance office in Washington, D.C. The Knights of Labor ended, but eventually those records became the property of scholars. I have a copy of the Knights Ritual. It's truly an interesting organization. Most Masons today don't. I'm not Masons. Most labor unions don't have any type of ritualistic initiation anymore. Some recognize their roots there, and some don't. I do not know a great deal about the Machinist and Aerospace Workers Union. My brother-in-law is retired from them. But I do know this, that their local chapters are called lodges, which is somewhat unusual. And so this is Labor Day. I thank God for labor unions. I thank God for Freemasonry. I thank God for the privilege of being a part of both. And I thank God for the life and legacies of both Uriah Smith Stevens, Terrence Vincent Powderly, and the Knights of Labor. Happy Labor Day, and God bless all.